the last item I have, Mr. Chairman, is the last Thanksgiving Day football game at Barry Field. As everyone's aware, we are going to be building a new elementary school at Barry Field. Very exciting to have that opportunity for our students as we move forward. The ground. I'm going to talk a little bit about the groundbreaking ceremony a little bit later during the meeting, but the groundbreaking will begin in December, and as a result, beyond this school year or beyond the groundbreaking, they're going to start the construction. They're going to start, moving the land at Barry Field, and we will be unable to utilize the football field beyond this year and the practice facilities as well. So I sent this out through my newsletter last week, and the athletic department at the high school is sending, and the high school is, in addition, is sending out a flyer, which is recognizing it as the last Thanksgiving Day football game at Barry Field, which will be on Thanksgiving morning at 10 a.m. If anybody has any questions or they want to order a T-shirt, they can contact Charlie Bebo, who is the head football coach, at cbebo1@woonsocketschools.com. So we hope to see many alumni, current students, faculty, and just members of the community. And Barry Field is near and dear to many of our hearts. Many of us played sports at Barry Field, and it will be it'll be a special, somber, special, exciting Thanksgiving Day football game. So I'm hoping that everyone who has experienced the Barry Field, whether they played there or went there to watch a game, will be there. So we're looking forward to that celebration. There'll be another celebration, which I'm going to talk a little bit more. I'm going to send more information out on the 30th of November, which is going to be a special event at Barry Field. So more information will be coming out in the following week or so.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. McGee.
With that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my recognitions and announcements.
Any comments, questions? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the recognitions and announcements. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, I'll make a motion to approve the October 23rd, 2024 closed meeting minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Any corrections to the minutes?
Nope.
Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to approve the October 23rd, 2024 open meeting minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Any changes to those minutes? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, we'll go on to the consent agenda, and I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Does any committee member want to discuss any item within the consent agenda? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll ask Ms. Sanchez to please give us your report.
Hi, haven't been here in a while, so I have a few things over the last month that have gone on. First being our Veterans Day cards. So NHS decided as a service project that we were going to choose 6 educators within the high school and the vocational school, and we were going to write appreciative and encouraging notes to our veterans. I know personally that I didn't know that any of the high school or vocational school teachers were veterans. So that was very interesting to me to know and hear. These adults were, I already said that, from the high school and vocational school, but it brought a smile to their face. So that was very nice. We had a lot of students sign. I would say at least 30 plus on each card. And so they were very full. Another thing was the holiday craft fair. I'm not sure how many of you got a chance to go or might have heard about it, but Woonsocket High School was home to its first annual holiday craft fair, but put on by our theater boosters on November 9th of this year. Not only was this a great way to fundraise for our spring show, which is Mamma Mia, if you haven't heard, but it also served as an opportunity for our community to bond while shopping and recognize that WHS is a place of inclusion and fun. So the way that that worked, it was actually really cool. I went and I walked around. We utilized the cafeteria and the hallway and kind of where Times Square is to put tables for each vendor, and they had all different types of things. One person had like stained glass little artsy things. One person had like a whole bunch of people had jewelry and like baby clothes and a whole bunch of things. It was just such a variety and it was very cool. So that's the first annual thing. It should be reoccurring. So great thing for the community. Mamma Mia. So you just heard me mention it earlier. Many students within our theater arts program, as well as the English department, were fortunate enough to enjoy a day at PPAC last week. The show was very eye-opening as it showed how we as theater students, and I say we because I am part of the show, can improve on our acting and choreography. And it helped those in the English department, such as like all the students that had gone. It helped them to realize that there's more to just reading and writing that you do in school, but it's also being able to articulate your voice and being able to use that inflection and perform. And then last thing that I want to mention is homecoming. As we wrap up our fall season at WHS, we are hosting the homecoming dance on November 26th, and in an effort to make as many students come as possible, we have lowered our ticket prices. Usually they're $15. We have decided to make them $5 if you purchase at the school, and then $7 at the door. And we do usually use this as a fundraiser for our student council, and so we do love that we're able to lower the price and be able to make it more accessible to a lot of the students in our community. So yeah, and that
Thank
concludes
you.
my report.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Excellent.
Great job.
Thank you.
Excellent. I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the student representative report. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, I'll ask Mr. Quadros to discuss the opioid crisis in Woonsocket.
Thank you. I am actually going to invite Mrs. Melly Bello, a clinical supervisor with Rhode Island Student Assistance Services, to lead us through the presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Melly Bello. I'm here on behalf of Rhode Island Student Assistance Services. I'm a clinical independent social worker. I have come to the work at Woonsocket for about 3 years now. For those of you that might not know our program, we provide clinical master's level clinicians at Villanova, Hamlet, and Woonsocket High School. We have a counselor in all 3 schools that provide substance abuse counseling, other mental health support. That's how I came to this community, and that's how we came to this presentation. So within the scope of my work, Kyle and I have been, collaborating. We also took a look at, if some of you might remember, October 4th was the last time that DOH sent out a spike alert when it comes to Woonsocket community and the opioid overdose crisis in Woonsocket. On October 4th, we received a alert that says, for the last 6 months, there's been a sustained overdose crisis in Woonsocket, leading to 376 non-fatal overdoses. When we looked at that number, that was about 15 overdoses, survivable overdose for the last 6 months. I also attended a HES presentation a couple of weeks ago, looking at further into that data. And the data suggests that 78% of the overdoses happening in Woonsocket were happening with women between the ages of 35 and 64. Also, they were happening, 88% of those occurrences were happening in private residence, which is what kind of trigger our ability to kind of think about my work as it relates to supervising the substance abuse counselors that we have already placed in the school, but also social emotional support for the students that are experiencing drug use in their home, and perhaps the school does not know that. So we put together a presentation which we had a first exposure to here at Hamlet last week, and our presentation was kind of first have a compassionate, open discussion about what does it mean when we understand that there's an opioid crisis in our community, that bring a space of compassion where people could have a space to discuss a very personal topic that for some might be private, for some might be very personal. So first of all, provide a compassionate space, provide the data that suggests that it challenges some of our biases, right? Some of our biases might speak to, is this happening to unhoused population? Is this happening to males? And what DOH has told us is that actually it's happening to females between the ages of 35 and 64. So when you further think about that, who are the 35 between 64? They're the mothers, they're the grandmothers of our students, right? They are the people providing the care, the caretakers for a lot of our students, right? When we analyze that data, a lot of homes in Woonsocket might be led by single female households, right? So if the data is telling us that 88% of those occurrences are happening in the home, what is the likelihood that our students are coming home or encountering an overdose by a caretaker, by somebody that lives in their home? Nationally, in that same spike alert, it said it was quoting fentanyl, which we're all kind of familiar with fentanyl at this point, just because it has been so prevalent, but also it was quoting xylazine. And a lot of people might not know what xylazine is, but xylazine is an animal tranquilizer that is about 100 times more potent than fentanyl. And that has been quoted in the spike alert as leading to some of the overdoses here in Woonsocket. So when we open up that compassionate, data-driven conversation, what does that look like in our school community? That looks like the unregulated students that come into the school. That looks like the behaviors that the teachers are already managing in the school that perhaps they don't know, they don't see what leads to those behavior, but they surely are showing up in our classrooms. They sure are being managed by our, by our teachers and our students and our student support systems. But also, like, what do we do with this data? Now that we understand that it does impact our community, our school community, it is impacting our students in the school. What do we do with that? How can we make genuine connections? How can we make meaningful connections for the students that perhaps don't know that there's a substance abuse counselor in their school, that perhaps for the family perhaps don't know that there is a substance use counselor in their school as well? That all the kids that left Hamlet last year, at some point in time when they leave Woonsocket Middle School, they also Woonsocket High School, sorry, they also leave with some opiate-related information and education. How do we make that connection that this goes beyond a conversation about general in the United States? It's really about Woonsocket, and how do we support the students that are experiencing opioid use in their homes, right? Because now we have some tangible, substantial data to suggest that the likelihood that our students are encountering that in their home is really high. So our presentation was last week here at Hamlet, and it's about compassion, it's about the data that informs us, it's about what can we do as a school community to have a more compassionate, more social emotional learning in our development if we are a professional in the building, but also how can we make meaningful connections for the students, for the families, and for each other as we support the students in this crisis. I do have a PowerPoint that we are hoping to get out to the families. And we do have information and conversations. We are hoping for this to be more of a collaborative conversation with the parents. We are hoping to find ways to get the information to the parents. But if you are interested in the PowerPoint, if you're interested in the information, Kyle could send out the PowerPoint to you guys. And also, if you're interested in us holding further discussion, further meetings, just let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Millie. I just want to highlight a couple of pieces. We unfortunately led the state in non-fatal overdoses in a 2-month window. It was about 15 per week. Sorry, 15 per month. It was about 2 a day. Well, 15 per week it was. 78% of them were 35 to 68-year-old females, which is all of our moms and grandmas, like Melly said. 80% of them happened in the home. Why does that directly impact us? We look at our test scores, we look at our absenteeism rates, all of these pieces are linked and connected. It's not just a community issue, it's a district issue as well. Because when a child experiences a loved one that has overdosed, or a child is exposed to that in any way, it actually leaves a marker in their brain that activates their stress response system regularly. When that happens, it limits their ability to function and learn and regulate. And so we're seeing high rates of suspensions, we're seeing high rates of dysregulation, we're seeing high rates of chronic absenteeism, we're seeing high rates of learning deficiencies. All of these pieces are directly linked. And so getting the message out and communicating the impact of trauma, the impact of having a loved one experience an overdose is critical and paramount to anything we do moving forward if we're trying to move the needle in student success. And so it's important that we get the word out because, again, this isn't the unhoused population that is repeatedly having these overdoses. It's happening in the homes of the kids every single day. And one of the national statistics is that every 7 minutes, there's a fatality due to overdose use. Just in the time we've been here, there's been at least 3 or 4 fatalities in this country based on overdose use. The number of overdoses that we experienced as a nation in the last year was more than both Vietnam and Iraq wars combined. It's important that we talk about these statistics and we understand them because when our kids are sitting dysregulated in class and getting kicked out and getting suspended, they further are being isolated, and they're just going back to the exposure of the overdosed household. And so we have to have the conversation. We have to do something about it. It's not just in our community, it's in our district as well. And it would be remiss of us to not think it's directly impacting our kids. It's our moms and grandmas, the people that are supposed to be taking care of our kids, that are having a difficult time to be able to take care of themselves. We need to be able to do something to support. So thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. And like I said, a lot of us are already managing those. If you are part of a support system in any of the schools in Woonsocket, you're already managing that crisis. You may not know that that's where it originates from. You may not have a background in mental health. You might be a math teacher, but you're already managing the outcome, the impact of what it means to live in a household with a chronic substance use condition for any of the parents living there. Because we do know that they show up, those behaviors show up in the classroom, show up in the lunchroom, outside of the classroom, and it's that lack of coping skills and that lack of being able to say, this is actually what really is happening with me today. And that's how I'm showing up at school this morning. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Any questions or comments? Vice
Mr.
Chair
Chairman,
Bill?
could I just ask a quick,
Of course.
were you surprised that the majority of the overdoses were in the homes and not in the stereotype that most society sees, the homeless hanging in the park?
I was very, sorry, I don't know if that
So,
question
I mean, were you surprised that that was the reality?
I mean, I suspected it a little. Like I said, I've been providing clinical supervision and clinical support for Hamlet, Villanova, in the high school. So I kind of suspected that, but I did not. I was surprised by the high number that is 88% in private homes, right? That is 78% for women. And when we look at some of the resources, when we look at the fact that we are sending resources to the unhoused population, we're sending resources maybe to the male population, but then where are the resources for the women that are providing care for the children? Also, when we think about the context of if it is a female experiencing a substance use condition, what is the likelihood that she's able, and she's a single household woman, what is the likelihood that she's going to be able to leave her home for 2 weeks
Right.
and go to detox, right? What is the likelihood that she'll have the financial support and the physical support to care for her children while she's out seeking treatment? So that really goes into the cycle of secrecy that goes into the cycle of like, I don't have a way to express what's happening in my home. My children love me no matter what, so they don't have a way to express what's happening in our home. The only way that they express it is by these behaviors, as Kyle mentioned, and that we see them in the classroom. And we have to kind of now try to tie them into what is really happening for that student that leads to those behaviors.
I also think it's important to note the data we have is only what was reported. And so many more go underreported for many obvious fears like DCYF involvement or CPS involvement. And so I think our numbers are actually a lot lower than the real reality of what we're facing. Was I surprised? A little bit, just in terms of how we talk so much about it being the unhoused or a male population 22 to 35. But, Dr. McGee and I sit in meetings with families and students regularly, and there are many times that family members come in and we can see that they are under the influence of a substance, and that's coming in to have a meeting with us. And so I think people are highly stressed. I think people are feeling under supported. And I think that it's a way to cope and heal, and if nothing else, at least have temporary relief of some of the pain that they experience regularly. And so was I surprised? A little, but not really.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to know, like, obviously, Woonsocket, we have an issue with this, a very big one, but in schools, is there like clarification that these children can come forward to talk to you guys about it? Like, they know that these resources are available? Is there like memos going out to the kids so they know at least they can come forward? Because I know it's tough kind of reaching towards parents, so.
I mean, for myself here at Hamlet, we do come to after school events. We do come to parent teacher conference just to get the word out to parents. But while in school, I surely am visible and present during lunch. I used to host social emotional groups. I used to have emotional regulation groups. I would tell all the kids at Hamlet, it doesn't matter why you walk into my door, there's going to be a conversation about substance use. We do go into classrooms and provide some of the education. And that education is like the difference between myself. I'm a social worker, just like Kyle. At Hamlet is a social worker, but the difference between the two of us is that I provide substance use specific support for the students at Hamlet. And the same goes for Billa, and the same goes for high school.
So my only other question would be, is there like a way that maybe, how we have like anti-bullying signs and stuff like that, that maybe we could put up like some signs where it's a little bit more known that kids can go and talk about these issues? So, maybe it might engage them a little bit more.
Yeah, every month we run like different campaigns. For example, this month we're running No Vape November.
Okay.
So, and that timer is usually the timer that I use when I'm doing my classroom presentation. So just in the time we've had this conversation, there's been one person that has died of an opioid overdose in the United States. So I just wanted to take a second for that person.
Anyone else? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the opioid crisis report. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Dr. McGee, would you give us your superintendent's
I
report?
will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the committee has, as you receive each school committee meeting, you have the staffing changes. I would let the committee know that as of today, we have 5 teaching positions that are still open, 1 custodian position, 1 secretary position, and 19 paraprofessional. We're getting closer with the teachers, getting closer to 0. Again, and I kind of say this each meeting, the challenge has been, and it continues to be, the elementary grade level teachers that we're having difficulty, which we haven't had that before. But those are the numbers to date. And the paras, it's like we add a few, we lose a few. It's we're trying to get down as close to 0 as possible with all of these positions, naturally. But it's still a challenge. But I just want the committee and the community to know that we're working hard HR, our Human Resources Department, and our administrators are working very hard with their staff to try to fill all of these positions as quickly as possible. Any questions anyone might have at this
Anyone?
time? The second item under my report, groundbreaking ceremony for the new school, that is going to take place on December 6th, which is a Friday. It will be at Barry Field at 10 a.m. There will be a variety of dignitaries there. There will be a variety of dignitaries who will be speaking. The public is invited to the event. We're hoping that people will join us. This is going to be a great opportunity to celebrate an opportunity that does not come along very often. We're very fortunate here in Woonsocket because we don't have the ability to go to bond, that the Department of Education is providing us with $84 million. We are paying 6% of that, and it's so a couple of things here I want to mention. So we're fortunate, as I said, that we have the Department of Ed providing us with the funds to provide this, but it's also a testament to the school district and to our finance department. I want to recognize Mr. Perrier. We have the ability to fund the remaining 6% because of the fiscal responsibility and prudence that we have shown for the last 10 years. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to construct this new school because we wouldn't have the funds to put down that 6%. So I want to thank Brad for his hard work. He keeps us in line to make sure that we keep the numbers above the water line. So I'm really thankful and grateful for his leadership over the years. And this again is a phenomenal opportunity for the children of this community. And again, it's a once in a lifetime. Although we're hopeful that at some point after this school is completed, that we'll certainly be looking to apply for more funds from the state so that we can either make repairs or replace other schools here in the district. But it's very exciting, and I think many of us sitting up here, we're not sure if this day was actually going to come, but it's almost here, and it's very exciting. It's a great opportunity for the city of Woonsocket.
Dr. McGee, I'd just like to add that I want to thank the members of this school committee and all the school committees that preceded us, who have been the caretakers of Barry Field for over 90 years, where that field was sold to the city in trust for the purpose of maintaining athletic fields or educational facilities. And we've been very faithful to that duty, to that fiduciary duty, to make sure that we were good guardians. And there was a time that we didn't know what was going to happen, but we remained steadfast. I'm very proud of our school committee for doing so. And now we'll be looking forward to the groundbreaking ceremony on December 6th.
Cool.
Anyone else? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the superintendent's report. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, I'll ask Mrs. Kepiscus to give us the CLAC update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Woonsocket CLAC met on Thursday, November 7th at 6 p.m. The meeting was virtual. There were 13 people in attendance. Under old business, I discussed my usual spiel about I need someone to replace me as chair. I'm currently serving as acting chair. I've previously expressed, and I expressed again that night, my concerns about a conflict when I'm advising parents to contact RIDE's helpline and file a complaint against the WED when I'm essentially recommending that I'm being sued as a school committee member. I asked all to speak to anyone that they might think might have an interest in taking over the leadership. I advised that I would still be attending meetings anyway because I'm the school committee liaison. so I can help whoever it is get everything up and running as I have in the past when I found a replacement once. Under new business, we discussed the busing situation. Per Mr. Notariani, he gave us a review that Durham shows they're providing less buses than required by the contract by at least 2 regular buses. We contracted for 19, they gave us 17. They are short drivers, but a new driver was in training and was supposed to be starting in December, bringing us up to 18. That they would add 1 more once they find and train a driver. He also advised that he would be asking the school committee to add a 3rd medically fragile bus. We have 2 right now, and it's not enough. He also asked those with issues to contact his office directly as opposed to Durham, because he wants to be able to keep a handle on what's going on. He made it clear that some of the staff at Durham, particularly Francisco, are doing their best to try to help solve the problem and should not be dragnetted in with their disappointment with the local office. He's meeting with all the principals to determine if students who did not even ride, even if they qualify or have moved, so that we can review the bus routes and stops and maybe eliminate some. Another issue has been the nonstop road construction, but the WPD has advised him that they would be winding up shortly due to issues with weather and temperatures. Ms. Morell says that her staff are also reviewing who qualifies for special ed busing at every IEP meeting to eliminate door-to-door stops where students are no longer using the bus or boarding the bus. This is common at the high school level, as students often do not want other students to see them get on the bus, so those students can be placed at a bus stop for a regular bus in accordance with their stated wishes. We went over the new graduation requirements and whether or not there had been any guidance issued from RIDE with regard to students with IEPs. Per Ms. Morell, there's still essentially no real guidance on students with IEPs and how they can meet the requirements to receive a diploma. The special ed directors have asked, as a group, how to address that, but for now, this is status quo. There are supposed to be waivers available for some of the requirements, but no real information on how to do it. Ms. Morell says she does not want to grant waivers and potentially jeopardize the student's intent to seek further education unless there's further guidance. Dr. Holt shared that she has heard that waivers will likely be in Algebra 2 and world language requirements. No real information has been shared. As an aside, I was at the combined Sean Rysiak meeting this past Thursday, and had the opportunity to ask, and was confirmed that right now the only waivers that are really being discussed are Algebra 2 and world language, but no real hard information on how those waivers will be granted. I had offered to corner David Cienko to ask about that, and that was the result of my cornering David Cienko. The chair, gave a brief review of ABLE accounts. ABLE accounts, that's an acronym for Achieving a Better Life Experience. Superintendent reported about the groundbreaking for Barry Field, which was currently scheduled at that time for December 6th at 1 p.m., but very much subject to change, which it has. Special education advised that the movements of students from classrooms and schools, class to class, school to school, should have stopped by now, and contact information for service providers, it should be sent out to the families by now. We've hired a new PT contracted through an agency who will work primarily at Pothier and the high school. The LEAs are focusing on conducting 3-year reviews in an effort to complete them before the annual IEP meetings start. This is in an effort to decrease the number of meetings required. DLM results should be out to families at that point within a week. So by now they should have them. The next meeting of the CELAC is on December 5th, 2024 at 6 p.m. virtually. The same link is used for all meetings this year. And I have to say, Mr. Chair, I'm a little bit encouraged because before that meeting, I received 2 requests to join the email list, and subsequent to that meeting, I've received 2 more requests to join the email list. So I think perhaps superintendent's sharing of the link might have drummed up some interest, which I'm very happy to report.
That's fantastic. That's good news. Any comments, questions for Mrs. Kepiscus? Then I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the CELAC update. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Vice Chair Burke and Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Notoriani, would you give us the building committee update, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the building committee met on Friday, November 15th at 9 a.m. at the Harris Public Library. The agenda entailed the approval of minutes of September 20th. There was a discussion on professional development and an opportunity to save some money in working with the vendor that's going to provide our furniture. There was further discussion about transportation. It's a hot topic, and we're looking to we're looking to partner with Transpar to look at evaluating all of our transportation routes and our systems moving forward so that we can make sure that we have transportation flowing freely through the city and to the new school building, accounting for the fact that we're going to change from 3 elementaries to 1 at Barry Field. We also discussed the project sign review, and it was noted that when the sign was going to be updated, as recently, I think, as last month, RIDE indicated that due to budgetary constraints, the new elementary school would have to move forward closer to Smithfield Road, which will reduce paving, which is a significant expense. So based on RIDE's strong recommendation, I'll call it, that change is occurring, and that was reflected in the sign review. And then the last item was the groundbreaking ceremony, which details were already discussed by Dr. McGee, and the meeting was adjourned right after that.
Mr. Tarian, have they started looking at the routes at this point, or is that something that's going to happen later on?
The building committee will, on the 13th of December, there will be the next building committee meeting. I'm expecting to have a proposal from Transpar to go before the building committee because it's a building committee expenditure as part of the new project. Once that's approved, they will start reviewing the routes from an external perspective from Transpar, which is exclusive of the review we're doing currently in-house with Durham. But we think at this time it would be prudent to have an outside set of eyes looking at what our transportation vendor is currently providing, and they will also guide us in terms of the future routing and how the grade levels are across the district. It's going to be wide in scope, not just transportation, but exactly where our grade levels are located in all the schools and all of that. So,
Great.
Excellent.
Any questions, comments? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the building committee update. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Leclerc, Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mrs. Kepiscus, would you give us the curriculum update?
You sure you wouldn't like to do it, Mr. Chair?
You're doing a great job.
Of course. The Curriculum Subcommittee met on Monday, November 4th at 3:30. After we approved our minutes, we discussed the state assessment data review. A printout was provided, and in short, it demonstrated improvement in state assessment scores in rooms which utilized our model of instruction, way of instructing students with fidelity versus those in which the model of instruction was not being utilized. When asked why the model of instruction is not utilized in every room, we were informed that the district cannot mandate educators to use the model of instruction, and many educators refuse to do so and are supported in that refusal by their union. As a follow-up, inquiry was made whether the failure or refusal to use the model of instruction was reflected on the educator's evaluation. We were informed that is not permissible, as the evaluation form must be in a format approved by RIDE. I found this extremely frustrating, personally. Generally, the state assessment scores were disappointing. RIDE places blame in large part on absenteeism. So do Massachusetts and Connecticut. The details were in the printout and are not reiterated here in favor of a full presentation before the school committee if requested. The next meeting of the Curriculum Subcommittee is on January 6, 2025 at 3:30 in Hamlet Room 124. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Kepiscus. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chair Burke?
the learning, what was it called? The learning styles of the
Board of
class?
Instruction, model of instruction.
The model of instruction, what is the percentage of teachers who do it and teachers who don't? Is that available, or is that just reflected in the scores?
Will be defined.
Or is that something we don't talk about?
Unlike Bruno, we can talk about it. So I don't have the exact numbers of teachers who are using it. I will say that our high school, all staff members have been trained in the model of instruction's first level of PD, which is called 101. It's about engaging students in discourse where they have some time to think independently, work as a team, to answer questions, and then synthesize their understandings and share out. The whole staff at the high school has been trained for 101. Many of our teachers at the high school have also been trained in 201, which is just bringing it up to a different level. And then a few have had 301. So we've had trainings during our summer academies where all staff have been able to participate. We also have been working with instructional empowerment for the last 2 years. It was actually the school committee approved our last proposal so that we have coaching for our principals so that they're able to look in classrooms and observe and see the model of instruction in action. We actually have calibration rounds happening this week. Tomorrow, I'm going on a calibration round with our EI coach. So the specific numbers of people who are using it, I'd say everyone knows our model of instruction, and the model of instruction is really just looking at 4 levers. The first is social, emotional, cognitive learning. So ensuring students feel comfortable and safe to take academic risks. The second is targeted task alignment, so looking at the standards and ensuring that our high-quality instructional materials match the standard and offer students the level of rigor that needs to be from the standard. So we're looking at the verbs from the standard and making sure it's in alignment. Then we also look at formative assessment so that students are able to identify where they're kind of losing track and then come back. And the fourth one is... Say it again? Discourse. That's the whole key of it. I don't know how I missed that one. So academic discourse and increasing student use of language in their classroom and building agency for them to, for the learning environment. So all staff are doing pieces of, so if we were to say, isn't everybody doing it? There's pieces that people are implementing, and we're here to support those who have questions on it and want more information about how to make it come alive in their classrooms. We have our innovation specialists and coaches who are here to assist with that work. So Dr. McGee, I don't know if you had something else to add?
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Sure, of course.
Can I follow up on what she's saying though? And
Absolutely.
then, so what Mrs. Kepiscus just said is that those who seem to be following it fully, their scores
Correct.
are good.
Correct.
And those who don't follow it fully, their scores were not that good.
Not as good.
It is not as good. And
Is that true?
that is true. That is correct. We have the data that shows that. And the classrooms where we're saying are following it fully, other classrooms that are taking part in the training and professional development and working with our coaches and specialists to be able to tweak their instruction to match the tenets of the 4 pillars. So yes, absolutely. We have data that shows in those classrooms when they're working and collaborating with our specialists, they're seeing results.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
I was wondering, maybe Mr. Burke and the rest of the committee, if maybe at an upcoming school committee meeting, maybe we do a presentation about what exactly the model of instruction is, and what it looks like. You know, what you would see, what you would hear in a classroom that's utilizing
Good
the
idea.
model of instruction. I think that would be important for the school committee to understand.
And I also think it would be helpful if we could share the data that was presented at curriculum so that you could see the difference in the scores and the students that participate.
Yeah, I would,
I think that would be important for us to, I thought that was important to see. And that's kind of what found me really disappointed and discouraged with the teachers that were not complying. And we got into a little bit of a legal discussion about if they're employees, they're supposed to do work as directed. They're not independent contractors. They don't decide how to do their work. But then there's this little thing called the collective bargaining agreement that creates the
there's such a
problem.
thing.
I've heard rumors. I'm not personally familiar because I've managed to dodge the negotiating committee every single time.
Thank you.
So I'm not familiar, but that's what I'm told. But I find that very disappointing. And I would think that teachers would hope that teachers would be more encouraged to take a stab at trying to do this model of instruction if they could see that the data is proving that they were seeing increased test score results. And there's a t-shirt I'm always showing people on Facebook. It says, "That's not very data driven of you." Teachers refusing to use the model of instruction, that's not very data driven because the data is showing us it's useful.
Right.
So it's frustrating.
I would, as Vice Chair Burke said, I'd like to see numbers. I asked for that at the curriculum meeting.
Mhm.
I want to know how many are using them at all the schools.
Yep.
Because we need to know who's really using this form of instruction and who's not. And what do we need to do to get everybody to use it, given collective bargaining, but still, I'd like to know if it's most of our teachers, but I'd like to know by building, who's using it and who's not.
Absolutely. Chairman, if you don't mind. Another piece, so Ms. Kapiskas was talking about how the model of instruction that we're implementing is, we're seeing the results in our data. We're also, our partnership with Instructional Empowerment, where we see from them the power of the model of instruction happening in other communities. They have significant research. They're a research-based organization, and they have a third-party evaluator who does their research and writes their journal articles about the work that they've been doing and the significance in turnaround for students. The goal is to eliminate generational poverty and the achievement gap. That's what they set out to do, and looking at the research that talks about how students are able to build their agency in themselves to be able to become lifelong learners and critical thinkers, and the proponents that we're looking for our students to graduate from high school being able to do. The research backing from instructional empowerment is just very powerful.
Thank you.
If I could add one more thing, we all, in addition to the data that Dr. Holt is referring to, we also have anecdotal data from students who are telling us that this model is more engaging for them in their classrooms. You know, we all know that you know, in this day and age where we're battling the cell phone issue, right, and where students are disengaging, but we're finding that in having conversations with students who are exposed to this model of instruction, which one lever, as Dr. Holt said, is academic discourse. It's getting students to communicate with one another and to share and to learn from one another. And they're liking it. It's engaging. Now, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that every single student is completely engaged. I'm not saying that. I don't pretend to say that. But it is providing more opportunities for our students to engage with one another in classrooms. So,
No, I agree. Anyone else? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the curriculum subcommittee update. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Vice Chair Burke. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ms. Santoriani, would you give us the technology facilities update?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a consolidated update. As of today, we have 39 overall technology work orders in the system. The committee may recall a couple months ago, our goal is to get under 50 by December, and we've met that goal, hoping that we can get even further down into single digits. There are 34 technology infrastructure work orders, which relate to laptops, projectors, and things of that nature. As of today, there's just one related to data systems, so that's significantly down, and they continue to work. Our staff continue to work as quickly as possible to resolve the issues. Presently, the tech department, in addition to working on work orders, is distributing the MacBooks, which I'm very thankful. They're doing a great job. So far, we've completed Coleman, Harris, and Savoy. We're going to be completing Globe Park Elementary this week. And at the conclusion of this week, we'll have passed out over 200 MacBooks to our staff. That is both teachers and paraprofessionals. We're one of the few districts that provides a full MacBook to both teachers and paraprofessionals, I think, in the state. That being said, in addition to the MacBook distribution, it's worth noting that we're allowing our staff to keep their Chromebooks so staff can adjust. I know, Mr. Burke, you had asked. So we're going to allow our staff to keep their Chromebook as well. So our staff, at the conclusion of this pass out, is going to have a MacBook, a Chromebook, and an iPad with an Apple Pencil. Come the April break, by then, we think there'll be enough time to transition to the new device. We'll assess it then, but I think we'll start the collection of the Chromebooks and put them back into our fleet as surplus for any students that may need them. But we're kind of giving an adjustment period like you had requested. Aside from the MacBooks, we're also rolling out our cybersecurity protocols, which will be a further discussion at our tech subcommittee meeting that's upcoming for next week. As I'm sure you've seen in the news, that's a hot topic again, cybersecurity in schools. But we are rolling out our cybersecurity protocols, and that should be completed sometime in January. The full complement of protocols is required by our insurance carrier. Our data staff are working to finalize state reporting specific to graduation, retention, and dropout rates for the Woonsocket Education Department and the Woonsocket High School. Student registration, there's nothing to report at this time. The facilities custodial services update, as of today, we have 146 work orders in the system. 90 of them are assigned to internal staff. They're items that we can fix on our own here in the district. We have a very talented group of individuals who work in the facilities department. The remaining 56 are assigned to outside contractors or vendors, whether it's a plumber, or if there's something we need from an electrician that we can't be handled in-house, or if it's from an HVAC vendor. The facilities department is also preparing for the winter season. They provided all the supplies to our school custodians, such as equipment and, rock salt, ice melt, things of that nature. And as of this week and next week, they're assisting with the setup for the city inauguration will happen on December 3rd. Transportation, I will just briefly mention that because I think we've talked about it twice this evening, but we continue to meet with Durham School Services. We finalized the elementary review for ridership routes and buses. Tomorrow we'll be reviewing the special ed ridership with Mrs. Morrell's secretary, Ms. Ledesma, to go over and make sure that we're transporting our students appropriately and they have them on the right bus, the correct bus. We've found some inconsistencies with that. We'll be reviewing procedures to making sure students that require harnesses, that's being fulfilled, door-to-door service. So there are several items to discuss there. You're correct, Ms. Kabiscus, in your update under CLAC. We are expecting an additional driver to start at the beginning of December. Once Durham meets that commitment and gets us to the 18th driver, I think it would be appropriate for the December meeting to request approval for a quote to add a third medically fragile bus. At this point in time, if they can't get us up to the 19 drivers for the general buses, adding another one on for potential billing isn't something I would recommend because they can't fulfill any of the requirements, other requirements, and I'm sure how they're going to get a driver for a medically fragile bus. Right. And then, yes, Woonsocket Police has indicated by December 15th, the construction will be completed in the city, or they'll shut down all of the construction that's scheduled for the season due to the winter weather. And we are looking to have a meeting right on the Monday after, or the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, to review with the high school leadership, transitioning the parent drop-off pickup location at the high school to hopefully alleviate traffic on Cass Avenue, which we think will improve the bus transportation times as they relate to like the middle schools and elementary schools that are after there. School resource officer, school safety, ALICE training is an initiative that we continue to embrace for the 24-25 school year. We're presently working with the faculty and staff to provide the initial and refresher training. I believe the middle schools is almost complete. I could be slightly off on that. They are doing small group trainings at the high school due to the fact that the auditorium and gymnasium are currently under renovation, but they should be able to accommodate larger groups moving forward. And we've provided a final supply of radios to our schools. I've asked those schools where they may need additional radios to ensure we have proper communication, that we've provided enough radios for all staff to have a radio. So we're one of the few districts in the state that has a municipal-wide, city-wide, school-wide radio system that works across the city. And other districts are following, but we did take the lead on that. And then finally, project-wise, the furniture upgrades at the high school are coming to completion. The auditorium, working with Mr. Perrier, that should be completed in January. That's what we're hoping for. The gymnasium is shaping up to the inauguration will happen in the gym, and then locker room renovations should be completed for the end of December, beginning of January. Science labs were completed. This greenhouse at the Career Tech Center was postponed by the Career Tech Center director. I know the committee gave approval, but it's postponed for further review with RIDE. I'm not sure the particulars on that. Savoy's furniture has been completed, including the renovation of the Library Media Center. And the Pothia gymnasium and library were renovated completed over the fall, along with the Library Media Center and the cafeteria. And that was both at Pothia and Harris. I apologize. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Nastariani, in terms of the inauguration, is there going to be a floor covering on the gym floor?
No.
So we'll have an opportunity to really scuff it up during the inauguration. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Wonderful.
With such a happy face on.
Okay.
There'll be two coats placed on the floor, Chairman, and then we will have our activities, and then the floor company, rather than put the third coat on ahead of time, has agreed to hold off so they can come back and buff out any
Fine.
scrapes and stuff.
Okay.
And put a third coat on during the holiday break in December.
As far as the auditorium, are the seats on their way? Are they here? When are we expecting them? Because I know this is the supply chain issue that I'm most concerned about.
So the seats are tentatively scheduled for sometime in December or the beginning of January. The seats, based on the supply chain that you're referring to,
Yes.
coincidentally, prior to the seats being in, we need to make sure the lights come in, and that has actually been something that's been held up a little bit by the manufacturer. Once the lights come in and are installed, then we're timing that when the manufacturer of the lighting tells us, okay, here's the date.
Right.
Then we can actually secure a date for installation of the seats, because the seats are coming directly to the school. There'll be no place to store them. It's kind of hard to coordinate with the furniture company. So
Right.
we have to make sure the lights happen first, because if we don't, we put the seats in, then you can't get the lift back in to install the lights.
Gotcha. Okay. Any comments, questions for Mr. Notoriani?
Just, Mr. Notoriani, just our technology subcommittee will be meeting
On Monday, the 25th at 4 p.m.
25th?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Ms. Kepiscus?
Just one question with regard to the auditorium. I hadn't thought about that. Is that why we've heard nothing about the annual holiday concert at the high school? Because there's no auditorium?
Well, Mrs. Kepiscus, I received an email earlier today from Smiello regarding the holiday concert and how they can do some type of a performance for the elementary schools. I have a meeting tentatively scheduled for, it's either Monday or Tuesday afternoon, or in the morning. I haven't solidified the time to meet with the theater arts department, where we will crash out a plan to either have a scaled-down version in the cafeteria, or, and speaking with Ms. Giordano, with the gymnasium coming back online in about another week and a half, the athletic department, working in cooperation with the theater arts department, is considering trying to figure out a way to accommodate the production on, I think it was the 17th or 19th, around there of December, of having the production in the gymnasium there. So the staff there are really working well together, trying to accommodate each other because of the renovations in the two main areas in the school.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the technology facilities update. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Leclerc. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Perrier, would you give us your financial update?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From the school committee this evening is the September 2024 fiscal update. Bottom line, we're currently looking at a projected $494,000 surplus as of June 30th, 2025. Again, I will caution, this is an early year projection. A lot still can happen between now and the end of the school year. Some financial highlights on the revenue side at this time. Woonsocket Education Department is projected to be on budget for all general fund revenue. We're not seeing any deviating circumstances at this point. On the expenditure side, all regular salaries are $1.638 million under budget at this time. When netted with the employee turnover allowance of a little over $1 million, this will put overall salaries $588,000 under budget. Currently, our substitute line is $169,000 over budget. Substitute pay is currently trending up due to vacant positions. Medical expenses are currently $831,000 under budget. I do caution, this is very early in the year. We all know it's very early in the year to be making these looks, but that is currently what the numbers are showing me. I would like to comfort the school committee in reminding them that we do have $1 million in OPEB funding available to us, as well as $2 million in our medical pooling account that can be used to offset any future medical expenses. Pensions are scheduled to come in over budget at this time. As you may recall, the legislation did add back COLAs in June. That is causing us to really see an uptick in our pension expenses across the board. I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end as far as a amendment to our budget goes. Currently, overages and purchase services are due to us being unable to fill some budgeted salary positions. The expenses from these overages are offset by the savings I mentioned in our salary lines. Transportation is currently under budget. As Mr. Notoriani said, we're not running a full complement of buses at this time, But we also have had a little unforeseen savings with ride transportation as well. That is currently projected to be under budget. Tuitions to private sources are over budget by approximately $988,000. We have seen a pretty big jump in out-of-district for tuitions this year so far. Again, I caution, this is early in the year. We do have a lot of ins and outs, and the district always is working on ways to recall students back to the district when time is appropriate. I think after Mr. Toriani's talk about the transportation, I think we'll be seeing a potential ad for transportation coming down the road. And I think January will be a good time frame for the finance subcommittee to get together, review really where we're at, and then put together the plans for how we are going to finish off the year and what adjustments we're going to make to our general fund budget. I foresee that happening probably mid-January sometime. Come to the school committee end of January for a final budget amendment, and then we can move forward with executing our budget for the rest of the year. At this time, if the school committee has any questions, I would love to answer them.
Like you said, the surplus that we're showing is very early in the game. It's very temporary. And I think a finance committee meeting in January will be good because we'll have 6 months. We should have a good handle on where we are with medical, where we are in salaries, pension, et cetera. So that'll be a good time to know what's going on, to really sit down and, propose the amendments to the budget, if any, that we need to make. Anyone else?
Agree, Mr. Chairman.
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the financial update. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Leclerc. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We have one item in unfinished business. I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the amendments to the non-union benefits policy made on November 6, 2024 by the school committee. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mrs. Costa.
Mr. Chair, I have submitted a recusal to Ms. Blaze on both item 1 in unfinished business and item 1 in new business. I must recuse myself from both.
Thank you, Mrs. Kepiscus. Does anyone have any questions? I mean, I've reviewed, it seems like all the adjustments that we wanted to make.
We made two adjustments.
That's correct.
Okay. When we reviewed the non-union benefits policy November 6th, we accepted it as is, and we made 2 adjustments. One was to upgrade vacation time
Correct.
for Tier B, we call them, employees. And we also rewrote the religious observance holidays to mirror the same policy that we have in the teacher's contract and the 1167 contract.
1137.
1137.
Right.
So those were the 2 changes that we made.
I agree. Any other comments? Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes, he went to the bathroom.
Mr. Leclerc
Indisposed.
has stepped away for the moment.
Okay.
And let's go into new business. The first item is to vote for the employment contracts with each of the employees listed under the terms and conditions reflected in the attachment agreements. Dr. McGee, we'll turn this over to you.
Chairman, just give me 1 second here.
Sure.
So the committee has the employment, the non-union contracts, 24, 25 non-union contracts, a list of all of the non-union employees. And there is also accompanying that, you also have the fiscal impact statement for those contracts.
Right.
The total fiscal impact for fiscal year 24, $97,521.64. Fiscal year 25,
Speaking to the speaker.
sorry. Fiscal year 25, $188,410.54, and the fiscal year 26 increased $195,736.29. And that's total. That's including all of the Social Security, Medicare, TIA, CREF, MERS, and ERSRI.
And the salary increases, I assume, are the 2, 4, and 4?
That's correct.
see.
And the rationale for that is that historically, the non-union increases follow suit with the with the teachers, with the three other unions.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't vote. Any questions, comments? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the rental of Hamlet Middle School for the 2025 summer work camp season with group cares. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke and Mrs. Costa. Mr. Notoriani, Dr. McGee, would you like to address this?
Sure, I can start. And if
Someone?
you want to add something, you can. So as the committee is aware, work camps has been in Woonsocket for,
How many years?
It's
I
a
don't know,
long
how
time.
many years is it? 5 years?
They've been here longer than I've been here, so
Have
that's
they?
going to be about 9, 10 years.
That long?
Yes.
Wow.
Interesting. Anyway, they've been here for a while.
Yes.
Each summer in July, they come for about a week and they do work throughout the community, you know, fixing houses and painting and doing not major construction, but, you know, minor supports for the community. So this summer, they will be here, or they're hoping to be here from July 13th through the 19th. They stay in, you know, one of our schools. It's typically been here in this building at Hamlet. So they're housed here for the week. And, you know, by all measures, they've done a great job for the city, and they've been good tenants.
They're good tenants.
They're good tenants.
They
Yes,
work well with us. They work well with the city.
they do.
You may notice them in July. Sometimes their meeting overlaps, their week overlaps with ours, and there's some music coming from the gym and
Yep.
whatnot.
Yes.
Yep.
It happened, yes.
Yeah.
It's been a good program, and
It
like
has.
I said, they've
Yep.
been good folks.
And-
Any
and-
comments?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chair.
we waive the rental fee and just charge them for janitorial services?
There's certain items that they pay for.
Right.
I think we waive the rental fee, but they do pay for the custodial service because
Right.
we have to have custodial services or someone in the building 24/7 the entire time they're here. There's a few things that they do, they compensate for.
Electricity, do they pay for the electricity?
Not electricity, but food services. They work directly with, in this case now it'll be Chartwell's. But it's a collaboration. We have to have a meeting with the fire marshal's office and the police. There's a little bit of work that goes into it, but it's well worth it.
Good group.
Anyone else? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the amendments to the school building committee membership. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Dr. McGee?
Dr. McGee, I'll take this one.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
In front of the school committee this evening, you may recall, the school committee does have to establish the school building committee. So the school committee does set the school building committee. With the recent elections, this is a good time, I think, to take a look at who is on our school building committee and then make sure that, you know, with all the turnover, we still are checking all the boxes here on the school committee table that I have shared with the school committee this evening. The school building committee table, I should say. So the plan here is to let everybody take a look at this. We're going to come up with some names and fill in the blanks. Obviously, the superintendent of schools, there's not much debate on that one. But I will be seeking input from the school committee on who else we can put on here. And then at our next school committee meeting, we'll be looking to return this filled out and have the school committee approve the new school building committee going forward. I think it's better we wait anyway because our local city council has not been sworn in yet. So I don't think the turnover has officially happened. I think once that happens, we're able to move forward with this, get our new school building committee put together and get this submitted to RIDE so that we don't have any problems moving forward with our construction project.
Mr. Perrier, this list, is this all inclusive? Is this, because I would want to see at least 2 members of the school committee on this committee.
This is the bare minimum right here. We can add as many people as we want afterwards. As many voting members as we want. There's really no limit on that. But these are just the required designees to form a school building committee.
Would you be so kind as to forward the current list of who's on the school, on this committee to all of us? Because that'd be a good starting point.
Absolutely. I can share our latest list with the school committee, and you can provide feedback, and we can move forward with a new list at the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Any questions? I think that's a good approach. Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve a cash transfer to the Rhode Island Health and Educational Building Corporation for funding the new school construction. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Leclerc, Mrs. Costa. Mr. Perrier, you want this? Would you like this, or Dr. McGee?
Not-
would you
not a
like to
problem.
address this?
The school committee, we're asking the school committee to approve a $3 million transfer to Rybeck. That is in addition to the $2 million that was always transferred earlier in the year. We will now be at $5 million of the $8 million that we will be committed for the new elementary project at Berry Field. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to get the money off to them. We're going to continue with the purchasing and make sure we don't run into any problems with cash flow. We do have the cash flow on hand. I don't see this being a problem, and I would like to get this money transferred over as quickly as possible so that we can move forward, continue to move forward with this project.
Let me ask you just one follow-up. I know we're going to have to give them another 3, right, for the 8 million. When are we planning to do that? Will it be before the calendar year end or after?
No, it's not going to be before the calendar year. Looking at the project and the timeline for the project,
Yes.
I would like to have all the money turned over before we break ground in April. I think that's a good goal to have, just so we know when they move in that there's no fiscal problems at all as far as the Woonsocket Education Department goes. As you may recall, we did put together a memo saying we would transfer the money in December and then also at the end of June. I'd just like to take care of this, to be perfectly honest with you, just to make sure that there's no hiccups and that there's no problems going forward.
We certainly don't want any problems from RIDE.
Absolutely not.
This has got to be smooth sailing from our end. No problem should occur from WED. So, no, I think that's a good idea. Any comments on the transfer? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the Rhode Island Department of Education Memorandum of Agreement for the Arts Initiative Act 2 School Building Authority Capital Fund. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Costa. Dr. McGee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Woonsocket Education Department is very, very grateful to the School Building Authority from the Rhode Island Department of Education. This is an Arts Initiative Act 2 capital fund in which we're going to be receiving $269,550 to put towards the arts here in the district. This is the second such award that we have received from RIDE over the last about 3 years or so. It's through the School Building Authority, and we are going to be working with staff and administrators in the district to look to see where we would, spend these grant funds on. For the first series, I guess you'd call it Act 1. We put much of that into the work being done at the high school in the auditorium, because of course the auditorium is used for the arts. So we're receiving another nice sum of money from them, and we'll be making the decision as to how we're going to utilize these funds. So this is just the committee approving it and signing it so that they can provide us those funds.
Excellent.
Any thoughts?
Anything else to
questions?
add, Brad?
No, nothing to add, Mr. Superintendent.
Okay. Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
The next item is a discussion on the use of white paper covering windows. I'm going to turn this over to Vice Chair Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a little something here to read. I put this item on the agenda in response to an email from a staff member in the main office in one of the middle schools. I was sympathetic to her concerns because it was a concern of mine. I also spoke to another staff member at the other middle school who worked in the main office, and I heard the same concern from her. FYI, our two middle schools are identically constructed. Now, the lobby of a school can be one of the busiest places in the school. Unfortunately, in our middle schools, staff members in the main office cannot see into this lobby because the windows of the office are covered in white paper. Now, in the original construction of this area of main office and the lobby, large windows were placed as such so that the main offices of these schools do know what is going on in these areas. And I think about this, with the white paper in place, covering not just the windows, but also the doors. Think about this, as the door handle to a door entering the main office is turned, the staff in that main office do not know who is entering. To me, that is not safe. Now, in Alice safety training, the A stands for alert. And the explanation for alert in the material states that one should be fully aware of one's surroundings. With no physical vision and view of the area outside the main office, these staff members are not, in my opinion, fully aware of one's surroundings. Thus, I believe in this area of the school, the white paper covering should be removed and thus open up the main offices to what is happening in their lobbies. Now, as an educator, I have been in school buildings for over 45 years, with the last 20 years being after the Columbine shootings, which changed plans for school safety. And in those 20 years, I have experienced many, many safety drills and many, many safety plans. But from my experience, closing off one's awareness of a situation with white paper covering was never a solution for safety in my experience. Now, I know, as I've heard over the last several days, there are many and several opinions about the use of white paper covering, opinions which differ from mine. And more will be discussed of these white paper coverings at other meetings. But I share at this moment my one concern, and I leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Burke. Part of the safety protocol is how to handle an intruder. An intruder is a person, to me, that is actually in the building. That's an intruder. If you're outside the building, you're not intruding yet. You might be loitering or being a vagrant, but you're not an intruder. If those, I'm agreeing with you, Vice Chair Burke, because if you can't see a person outside that may be suspect, then how in the world can you really react ahead of time to prevent an intruder, a person to become an intruder? I understand there are safety protocols that say you need a safe, controlled room, and the admin office should be the place. However, I agree with you. The people that work in there are not always looking at computers to look at cameras. If you take away the white paper, you have a better chance of more people in that office to identify a problem before it exists. So I hear what you're saying, and I'm in agreement with that. And I know this is going to be taken up at the safety, probably at our next safety committee meeting, We've talked about this before, and this conversation will continue, but I agree. And I think the middle schools are the only ones with the white paper and the admin offices. Is that correct, Mr. Toriani?
We
Or is there
pa-
more?
We paused it based on the concerns that were raised, and then I recommended we go back to the subcommittee because on one hand, we've had two buildings request to have it removed.
Yep.
I've had other buildings requested or said to us, when are we getting ours? So there's some conflicting opinions, which is why I recommended recently that we have a subcommittee meeting to go through as much as we can with the SROs who are the experts in the ALICE protocol, and they can kind of delve into some of the details. I also had a thought, just based on this agenda item, is it might be worth the school committee having its own personalized, I'm not sure how we would do it because of open meetings, but it might be worth the school committee participating in an ALICE training so you understand both the protocols and what they do. Significantly important in this matter is the scenarios, which is what dictates what we do with the ALICE protocols. Because if we go through the scenarios with you, there may be a greater appreciation or still disagreement with the ideas behind the protocols, but they could go through some of the reasoning behind it. Because I could certainly appreciate what Mr. Burke, Vice Chairman Burke and Chairman Bourget have said. We talked with the SROs as recently as Monday in terms of any alternative recommendations. They have come to a unanimous opinion based, and they will share it with the subcommittee. But it might be worth going through the ALICE protocols with the committee members and share the scenarios, which then dictates or informs us as to why some of the choices have been made in this building. And if I just made the white paper covering was selected, it's not white paper. I know we called it white paper because that's what it looks like. The material was selected based on the fire code. So the ALICE protocols dictate that you lock down a room and you cover your windows. We were implementing that protocol for years here under just previous protocols of lockdown. We would use paper, they would use curtains, they would use whatever material they wanted. And the fire department informed us that that is against the fire code. You have to have a fire-rated material. So in consultation with the Woonsocket Teachers Guild, the building principal here in this building, our SRO, we had selected that material to use because we couldn't afford to put the blinds in. You may recall here, we had paper on the windows above us for years. And we had looked into putting, not those windows, I'm talking about those windows, and we looked into buying blinds that you can put up and down, but the cost for that it's cost prohibitive to do that across the district, to also get materials that are fire retardant. So there were several factors that I think appropriately could be discussed at the subcommittee meeting, and I would invite the SROs and the police to provide their expert opinion on it, and then we can explain further, why there's a specific implementation here in Woonsocket.
Mr. Chairman, can I just follow up with
Absolutely.
Mr. Notarani said? We also used to have white paper coverings on the bottom windows of the cafeteria, and at a school committee meeting, in an informal session, we asked to take them down because we wanted people in here to see what was going on outside. And so far, it seems to have worked out, I believe. And I also want to say, I've been a participant in ALICE training for several years when I taught at my schools in Massachusetts. So my concerns are not out of thin air. So I want you to know that, because you thought
Vice-
that
yeah.
we should have to be trained. I've been trained for several years in it too, so.
Yes, they just offered it up. They said they'd be willing to provide one, to the committee members as to why they came to the determination. So this was their recommendation, and that's what we're implementing.
Well, let's see what happens when we go to the subcommittee, because this is a hot topic. I mean, we've been discussing this now for the last couple of years. When we had them, like Vice Chair Burke said, we had them on those windows, we took them off, they've been everywhere. We've taken some off and we still have some on, so there's been no decision, but I think we need to discuss this further.
May I just say something? I understand like everybody's points of view, but for me, I personally think being somebody like a secretary in an office like that, it's very dangerous for them not to be able to see, not only for, as you say, like intruders or preventing stuff like that, but also because there's a lot of things that happen with kids. And if the secretaries are the ones that see it through that window, they can maybe prevent a fight from happening or an altercation from happening, but they can't see. They can't see the students. They can't interact with them. They can't stop something from happening because they can't physically see that area anymore. And to me, I feel like that would be dangerous.
We will have it at a subcommittee meeting. I'll bring the police. They will give their recommendation. The committee can then make a decision, and I will implement the decision of the committee. But right now, we implemented what the police had recommended.
Dr. McGee?
That's what I was going to say. When these plans were first put together, it was the recommendation. This wasn't just something that we felt as though, it was a recommendation to us. So that was the rationale for doing that. And I think that it's a good idea to have a subcommittee meeting and to discuss it, and then to, ultimately come to a final decision.
But Dr. McGee, this shows us now that we're discussing it, that the recommendation was made to you and the directors, not to us. We never voted on this over the years, correct?
Yeah.
So that's why we're continuing the discussion now,
Right.
because we never voted on it.
No, I didn't.
It was a recommendation to
Right.
Ed.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But-
It wasn't a vote that was taken. It was a
No.
recommendation to us. And then when we started that process, we included those windows.
So I think further discussion, and then it should come back, and we should decide what's going to happen. But right now, there's controversy throughout the district regarding the white paper.
It's unsafe.
Anyone else?
And what, if I just said,
Sure.
so it's going to be important because, as Mr. Natariani said, you have differing opinions
Right.
and viewpoints across the district. There are some buildings that want it and feel safer with it, and there are others. And I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I mean, you can make an argument on both sides, but I'm hopeful that when we do have the discussion, if there's anyone, out there in the district that feels strongly on either side, that they attend those meetings. They're not voting members, but I would hope that if there are people out there that feel that strongly, that they would attend to those subcommittee meetings to hear the conversations that we're having. I think that would be really important.
One of the things that we've been talking tonight is Vice Chair Burke and his, description and the report was dealt with the offices, the main office. We're not talking about the classrooms. We're not talking about it. There's none of that. So I don't know if we've heard, complaints about coverings on the classroom windows. But we know that the discussion that I've had and what Vice Chair Burke's had with people, it's the offices in the middle school.
Right. And with respect to the classrooms, this all started with the union coming to us and saying that because of the fact that, as Mr. Natariani stated, the fire code, people were putting up a variety of things on their windows. They were putting up, shades, they were putting up paper, they were putting up, you name it. And we told them, you have to take that down. So they said, well, we want something up so that if there is an intruder, the intruder can't look in and see students or staff. That's kind of where that started. So I just wanted the committee to be aware of that. So that's sort of, how that came to be.
Mr. Leclerc?
We generally default to experts in their field when we have issues with things we're not quite aware of or are fully informed of. And I think that's where this comes from, is the police department. They're kind of more experts in a sense in how ALICE training should be implemented or how the schools are being kept safe. And that's done through different instances that occur like Columbine. And that information changes through each issue that has occurred. So it's very moving. I think, Mr. Burke, you've done those things before, but I think it's changed in those a few years since you haven't. So my only take would be, like, we need to take the police department's recommendations and really look at them and make sure that we follow those recommendations. We could have some other issues on our hands, but I think we should always defer to the experts, and none of us are experts in how to keep our schools safe.
That's it. Ms. Kepiscus?
I just had one question. In connection with windows to the lobby, I can understand why you might want to be able to see what's going on in the lobby. But in terms of windows to the exterior, don't we have a locked system? If someone's coming in that door, they shouldn't be coming in unless they were buzzed in. So I don't understand why those would be an issue. I can understand the ones in the lobby. You'd want to be able to see students, what's going on, that sort of thing. But I would think there's got to be, if we have a locked system, there's got to be some sort of mechanism. They're either responding to you verbally or you can see them on a camera before you're buzzing them in. That's just my thought with regard to the exterior windows. I'm not on the building committee. But I can certainly understand the concerns of wanting to see what's going on in the lobby in front of me. I work in an office building and I know how that feels to not be able to see what's going on beyond your door. And sometimes you can, especially in a school, you're hearing noises and you don't know what they mean. Kids can be raucous just because they're loud, or kids can be raucous because trouble's brewing.
Right. And I think all those issues will be discussed at the subcommittee.
We can discuss at the subcommittee, and Mrs. Kepiscus is right. All of our buildings have a locking
trap.
mechanism at the main entrance. And then what we did with the white paper, so we did respond to the request specific at Villanova. We did respond to the fact that there's a buzzer at the front, and the concern was that if an intruder's there and they're hiding a weapon, or if a visitor comes through the door and an intruder comes from right behind them. So what we did was we installed a camera between the main door. We created our own man trap. Chairman, you're correct. We created our own man trap. We put an additional camera in so the secretaries could see it from their computer. So if you buzz in the first door and say an intruder comes in behind a guest and barges their way in, before they can get into the main office, we installed a secondary camera, and then we installed a secondary buzzer on the door there. So if they get through the first one, they still have to get through a second one. Ideally, and I'm hopeful, based on the fact that we received several $1 million for both middle schools to renovate and reconfigure to the middle school upper elementary, one of the things that we can incorporate in there is security upgrades. And I'd like us to implement a true man trap setup like the high school, where they put bulletproof glass. But we're not quite there yet, which is why the decision was made where we're at right now. There are many factors we can talk about, I think, more appropriately at a subcommittee without getting into details, disclosing any of our security protocols. But you are correct, and one, that we do have a buzzer. And at Villanova, we did listen to the concerns, and we installed a second buzzer to try and alleviate those concerns until we could come to a better solution, because it's a tricky situation. I can appreciate the concern. I'm sure I wouldn't like it if I was trapped in a bubble all day and couldn't see out either.
Okay. Let's go on to the next one, and we'll wait to see what happens at the subcommittee meeting. The next item is I'll make a motion to discuss and approve changing a vacant position from a certified occupational therapist assistant to an occupational therapist. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Leclerc. Mr. Leclerc, sorry. We always goof up your name. I don't know how, but there we go. Who wants to, I know we have Dr. McGee, we have a fiscal impact, and why are we doing this? First of all, why are we making the change? And
You want to start, Dawn, and then we can get to the fiscal impact?
Yep.
Please.
So we recently had a CODA that had vacated their position this year. Last year, we had an OT that vacated a position, and we could not find an OT to fill that position. So we had filled it with a CODA. This year, it's the opposite. We have the CODA position, but we're not able to find a CODA to fulfill that position. We do have a few OTs that have applied, but I would need the switch to happen to be able to offer the position to an OT, because there's a fiscal impact. We also are looking, because of the change of the deal. The position is district-wide, but it would be at the elementary level right now, mostly at Globe Park and Vernon Heights.
questions, comments? Anyone?
Oh, a CODA is a certified, sorry.
The fiscal impact is roughly 47,000, as I see,
Yes.
from making that change. Any comments or further questions? Dr. McGee?
That was easy. Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Costa,
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
Last item on our agenda is a discussion on Rise's Preparatory Mayoral Academy, major amendment to convert from a mayoral academy to an independent charter school. Mrs. Kepiscus.
Thank
I
you,
mean, we
Mr.
all have some experience with this issue in the last few days, but I know you were at a meeting tonight at a hearing, and you did speak at the hearing, so we'd like to hear about it.
It's been a very stressful few days connected to this.
Yes, I agree.
On Friday, the Rhode Island Department of Education Commissioner's field memo reflected that RISE had filed a motion or a petition to make a major amendment to their charter, which would convert them from a mayoral academy to an independent charter school. Of course, they didn't notify us. They didn't notify any of us. Ms. Kim here sent me the field memo on Monday and said, "What do you think this means?" And I read it and went, "Oh my gosh, what does this mean?" So I began to do a little bit of research, looked at the proposal, and what they were doing was essentially the way the funding formula works. We're allowed to hold back certain sums for a mayoral academy because they don't participate in a pension system. And they wanted to amend their charter so they were going to begin to participate in the pension system for their employees. And as a result, their per student share was going to increase significantly from about $900 to just over $2,000 per student. And I immediately reached out to some people, Mr. Bourget, Mr. Ward, who is currently the president of the city council, Brad, Dr. McGee, and basically said, what's the impact of this on us? And the impact on us in just the first year, according to Mr. Perea, is about $500,000. And that's before they add on the second elementary school and the high school. The high school is only populated as to the 9th grade now, I think. Yes, 9th grade. And they'd be looking to populate 10, 11, and 12 and opening a high school somewhere. So this would be an ever-growing expense. So as a result, we discovered that Monday, there was going to be a public hearing tonight at the library at 5 p.m., 2 days' notice, tried to mobilize as many people as we possibly could to be there. Wasn't a huge crowd like we've had in the past for RIDE because it was very short notice. And essentially there were probably 16 people that spoke. I would say there's probably about 25 people in the room total. 5 people spoke in favor. It was the executive director of RISE, the fiscal director, and 3 members of the board. There were 10 people that spoke against: Dr. McGee, Mr. Leclerc, me,
Mr. Stewart?
Mr. Stewart, who almost came to blows with the mayor.
Thompson.
Thompson?
Thompson,
Brian?
Brian,
Gendron.
Gendron, Canoyer,
3 citizens.
and 3 citizens who spoke against. So it was basically 2-1 against. And then Mr. Ford was also there. He asked questions of RISE, which of course they weren't going to answer in that setting. If you've never been to a public hearing on one of these, you get 2 minutes to speak. Basically, they record all the statements. There's no give and take. There's no one to talk to. You just give your statement. I was first. Mr. Leclerc was second. The last to speak were the people from RISE. But the bottom line is everyone needs to understand, as my old French ancestors would say, quite frankly, I think this is a fait accompli. Because RISE has already changed their website to reflect that they were a charter school, no longer a mayoral academy. So that's pretty obvious that they think this is a done deal. That's my opinion. I think the way that this was handled and the fact that nobody was notified and 2 days notice, essentially would have been maybe 5 days notice. Had I been subscribed to the field memo, which I was not, but I am now, we would have had that 5 days notice of this hearing. There's only one public hearing scheduled. Public comments can be submitted until December 4th. That's roughly a 2.5 week period for public comment. If you look at any of the charter school statutes, they all provided for longer periods than that, 60 days, 2 public hearings. So I have some problems with the legitimacy. Also, this hearing was not posted publicly on the Secretary of State's website, which may in and of itself may be a violation of the OMA as brought to the attention of everybody by Mr. Brand. But I don't know what the consequences are going to be. The officials there for RIDE were just basically timekeepers and videotapers. They don't have any information. They don't offer any comments. The proposal is available on RIDE's website. If you look up charters or charter proposals, you'll see major amendment. From what Steve Osborne said, who was a person from RIDE, this is a novel situation. This is a new situation in Rhode Island. We've never had a mayoral academy convert to an independent charter school. But I can tell you what RISE's position has been. You could tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. LeClaire. But my opinion is they feel they're being treated differently than Beacon. And because Beacon gets a greater share, and they want to get that same greater share that Beacon is getting. And as I indicated in my presentation, my 2 minutes, and I spoke very fast and got as much in there as I could. Basically, that RISE is not like Beacon because Beacon is essentially what they called in Providence a magnet. It is a specific type of school. It has a focus. It has focus on the arts, performing, culinary, and visual. RISE is just a college prep school. And as I argued, as a result of the guidelines that RIDE pushed through last year for all of us for college graduation, for high school graduations, and the new requirements, every high school in Rhode Island is forced to be a college prep school, whether or not you want to be. We're pushing out students that are going to meet the requirements for a 4-year college, whether or not they intend to go, and penalize the students who can't meet those requirements and have no intention of going to a 4-year school so that they get no diploma. So I don't see how RISE can distinguish themselves from a public school, a conventional public school here in Woonsocket. They don't distinguish themselves at all. They're a parallel system because we're both college prep. We're all pushing out people who are prepared to go to a 4-year college. I gave my speech. I also, just so you know, in case I get a minimum housing violation or arrested or something, I also firmly threw, along with Mr. Stewart from the union, threw the mayor under the bus because he signed off on this proposal for the amendment that was submitted to RIDE in July of 2024. When we were in the midst of budget discussions, and he was part of those discussions, and nothing was said to us, and clearly it was going to have a significant fiscal impact on us. And RISE mentioned in their proposal that they might have to lay off a few people
6.
if we don't adjust to this. And I mentioned we laid off 42 last year. And if they approve this, we'll be laying off many, many more than the 6 they'll lay off if we don't approve it. I have problems with the way this was done from the bottom up, that there was no notice to the hosting community. There was no notice to the submitting schools. They're still referring to it as Woonsocket, North Smithfield, and Barville. Anybody who reads any newspaper knows North Smithfield and Barville are not sending students anymore. North Smithfield students were uninvited when the town administrator refused to sign a letter of support. Barville just made a decision they were pulling out, and they're not sending students anymore. The students from North Smithfield and Barville who are already there can continue and finish, but they're not accepting any new students, which means that the students populating the present RISE and the present 9th grade are only going to grow to be more and more Woonsocket students at the second elementary school and at the full high school. So who's going to be bearing the load? We are. Right now, we'd be shifting $500,000 in the first year, that's the lowest estimate, for their 400 plus students away from our 5,700 students here in Woonsocket. And we also all know that their special education record, not great. They send them back to us as soon as they present any problems or are going to cost them any money. And I'm perfectly comfortable saying that publicly. That is what they do. If they indicated they had a 20% special education rate, my opinion is it's probably all speech. I'm not saying speech is not an issue, but it's not behavioral kids. These are not behavioral kids. These are not kids with major multiple disabilities. These are not medically needy children. they're all coming back to us, whether or not they win the lottery. They're going to stay at Rise till October, so they get counted for their student population, and then they come back to us. That's the game that they play. And I'm really sick of it. So this is on our agenda because I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of it. I want you to know that we organized as a school committee, probably in violation of the OMA, but I don't think so, because it was just a logistics thing. We made sure that there were 3 people that were going to be here to make a quorum so that 2 of us could go and speak. And we spoke on behalf of everybody in opposition to Rise. And I apologize if that's not your position, but in an effort to protect everybody's jobs and our students, I thought that would be everyone's position. So Alan and I took that position that we were opposed. And again, the only people that spoke in favor were from Rise, the board, the executive director, and their finance director. There was nobody, no citizens from Woonsocket spoke in favor of this. And the 3 that were there spoke against it. So I don't know if you have anything you want to add, Mr. Leclerc?
No, you nailed it again.
As always.
I don't think, I agree with you. I think it's a done deal, and there's not much that's going to happen otherwise, but
It is, to my opinion, it's disgusting because we on the building committee have been working with this mayor for some months now.
yeah.
And everything is, oh, I want collaboration, I want open government, I want communication. And yet we find one of the biggest problems that we're going to face, the biggest financial impacts that we're going to deal with is this conversion to a charter school. When this was known months ago and kept away from the election, and all of a sudden, right after the election, this is dumped on us. And fortunately, if we hadn't seen this memo, this hearing would have happened with no one there. This was the complete chef's surprise. It was done in the dark, and there's just nothing good about this. And the counselors that I talked to, our state, delegation, the reps and the senators, none of them knew about this. This was a bad situation, and it's not going to be any better. And I agree with all of us that this is a done deal, but we have to make every effort to oppose this. It's our duty to oppose this because it's going to impact our teachers, it's going to impact our families and our students in a very bad way, and it's only going to escalate as Rise continues to expand.
Agreed.
And the reason I wanted to put this on the agenda was I wanted to discuss whether or not we should submit, and I don't even know if there's a mechanism because frankly, I can't find a law that addresses this particular situation because it's novel. I couldn't, in my brief research, I couldn't find a law that covers what they have to do when they're converting from a mayoral academy to a charter, because I don't think there is a law on point. But when they submit any sort of proposals for expansion of seats or a new charter, the hosting community is allowed to submit a fiscal impact statement. So I'd reached out to Mr. Pereira immediately on Monday and said, I hate to put more work on you, but do you think you could put together a financial impact statement? And he said, sure, he could, but there are a lot of unknowns, and I'll let him address that. But I think that we need to think about doing that, which means we'll probably have some sort of a special meeting, have to have a special meeting before December 4th, so that we can approve what that fiscal impact statement is and submit it during the public comment period, unless there's some different fiscal impact period that I'm unaware of, because that little blurb that was in the commissioner's memo doesn't talk about fiscal impact at all.
Right.
It's silent. So I would think if we're going to submit anything, we probably have to submit it prior to the date that public comment closes, which is postmarked by December 5th.
Yeah.
4th, excuse me, which is a very short time frame with a Thanksgiving holiday with 3 days of no school, smack dab in the middle of it. I think that none of this is unintentional.
You wanted, yeah, unintentional, correct.
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chair Burke.
in that blurb that's in the report, Rise also says the reason why they're doing this is because they're facing fiscal challenges. And I thought, how ironic. They're facing fiscal challenges, and they're now putting the fiscal challenges on us.
Oh, and they also said they're having difficulty finding space for their high school because of political pressures, and also that they were investigating a possible collaboration with the WED. Remember P3?
Yes.
We were going to have connected high school and elementary school, and that political pressure forced that to be pulled back. That's in their proposal. Mayor Baldelli is the one who pulled the plug on that. No notice to anyone, just a notification, we're not doing it anymore. So where was the political pressure? Who was applying pressure? It certainly wasn't us.
She supposedly backed off because of this petition of some 700 names. But knowing the mayor, there was no way that that's what caused her to do this.
It was something else. We all know that.
Absolutely.
So when I read that, that incensed me tremendously. I mean, it's full of misrepresentations, like usual.
Yeah.
They blamed all the struggles they've had on the political push and pull that's been going on. And yeah, there's been a political push and pull, absolutely, because of who the figurehead was. And there's conflict inherent in a mayoral academy. There just is, because the mayor of the hosting community is going to have some say in what goes on in that school, yet is going to be voting on, not voting, but addressing the council on things they're going to vote on with regard to that mayoral academy. It's a problem. So throwing it to you, Mr. Perea, do you think you can do a fiscal impact statement?
Yeah, the one that I put together is pretty accurate, I would say. I could certainly tweak that, present something to the school committee and the time frame that you're looking for. It would have to be a special committee, a special meeting, I believe. But that's certainly something that I could present to the school committee. They could approve, and then I could submit via email. I did submit the last fiscal impact via email. There is an email address that you can send in your public comments to. I did receive a thank you for your public comment, and I haven't heard anything since the last one, but I will gladly do that again for this. Again, you mentioned the $500,000. That is on the conservative side, but again, we'll go with that.
Yeah, and we would need the new rates, the charter school amounts.
But you're not going to have the new charter school rates because they aren't released till the spring.
Right.
So you
No,
can only
I'm
really.
talking about what going from 977 to.
Oh, then that was that's where the $500,000 comes from.
Right, I know. But I mean, your old fiscal impact that got us to 15 million down the road,
Oh, yeah.
this
Mhm.
would be adjusted for the new
Absolutely.
numbers.
So yeah, it's 30 million.
Doubling it.
Double it. That's really what it is.
Right.
It's doubled
30
across the
million.
board. Actually, a little bit over that.
Right.
You know, I watched the last council meeting of elementary and secondary education when they discussed getting rid of the cap. And one of the members who voted against it, only one did, that member said, we didn't even look at the fiscal impact of the district. And I
I can
thought,
assure you, I emailed it to him.
I know you did. Yeah, I know you did. We didn't even look at it, they said.
Well, they didn't care, obviously. No.
I am pleased to report that it's not on their agenda for tomorrow night, which I fully expected when I looked at that agenda, it was going to be on tomorrow night. It's not on tomorrow night. At least I have the courtesy to keep up the facade, and I guess they're not going to vote on it till their December meeting. When public opinion closes.
Now, do you want to should we have a special meeting to do this?
Can we approve it without seeing it? I don't know that we can approve it sight unseen, a fiscal impact statement.
Oh, I think we need to
Can
see
you-
it.
We had
Need to
Can you
approve it.
email it to us and then we can all say yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, have Brad email it to
done
us.
remotely
Right.
without an actual physical meeting.
Caroline?
You're a friend of mine.
I don't know, what did we do last time?
Thank you. Sending it, ride. Correct. And we need to know yesterday, so we need to have this.
Excellent.
Right. Because if we don't need a meeting, that'd be better.
Yeah, it
Send
would
the impact to us. And then
Again, to summarize, it's double what the fiscal impact was last time.
Doubled.
Yeah.
It's not like we're going to be picking apart your fiscal impact. The only one who would do that is the guy sitting in the middle. Because the rest of us are, I don't know, I'm Mickey the dunce when it comes to accounting. I just say yes.
Mickey the dunce.
I rely on the expert.
He's the expert. I'm letting him do it.
No, so let's, and do we want to have obviously a cover letter, a cover memo? Since you're the
Whatever he
wordsmith?
did the last time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the gnats are back.
We did not need the last.
Sounds good.
We didn't meet the last time.
I think it was on our
It was
agenda.
on our
You
agenda.
just sent it, yeah, okay.
All right. Okay. Yes.
So moved.
Can we do that when we don't have a vote listed on the agenda? It's listed for discussion only.
So
Hold on.
We make,
I don't
can
know,
we
I'm
make a
just-
motion
just-
to add an agenda item?
wouldn't that
Yeah,
mean?
can we?
Because this falls under emergency, we could add a vote because of the, yes, because of the time constraints.
So I hear that, right? So if it's marked for discussion on the agenda, we can never take a vote on any of the discussion we did. Would you have to hold
Usually
on?
you don't. Usually you don't.
But this considers an emergency.
We'd have
That doesn't
to,
make sense to me.
we'd have to vote to add, but usually additional amendments, additions to the agenda are only for discussion.
Oh, okay,
That's what usually happens.
gotcha.
In the future, we put discussion/vote just so we don't have this issue.
Well, like Kim said, we might be able
Well-
to do it because of the emergency, because of time constraints.
You can send it as financial.
Oh, I agree.
Send it
We
with
did
school.
it
I'm gonna
recently.
verify it.
I'll be expanding.
It makes sense.
Tick, tick, tick.
How it's going to affect us. And
Yep.
There's got to be a mechanism by which we can do it without having to meet. I just can't imagine that there isn't.
I mean, Brad can send it.
Hold on.
I mean, can I jump in? I mean, technically, anyone is allowed to submit this just public comment. So, I mean, I could just put together share with the school committee that this is what I'm submitting. I don't need you to vote on it. I can just share it with you and then forward it on.
Right. We need to amend the agenda to allow us to vote for
So-
tonight. And that's to authorize me to sign or to sign a letter. Right,
Okay, so I make that motion.
with a fiscal impact.
with the fiscal impact.
So moved.
Yeah, I make that
The
motion.
motion's in, do we have a second?
Second.
Ms.
There we
Leclerc,
go. Let's do it.
make sense?
It does.
Everyone?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
No, Dr. McGee, roll.
This is
Chairman-
add the amendment. right?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
And now,
That was painful.
And now we vote to the authorize, this was to put it on the
I
agenda.
make,
Do we have a motion?
I make a
I make,
motion.
go ahead.
Mr. Leclerc,
I make a motion to have Brad write up a fiscal impact statement relative to rise changes in their contract that authorizes the chairman to sign on our behalf as a school committee.
I second that.
Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke.
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus.
Yes.
Mrs. Costa.
Yes.
Mr. Leclerc.
Yes.
And there we have it.
We have no other items on our agenda. I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:13 PM. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Leclerc and Mrs. Costa. All in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
We are adjourned.